Get ready to do life and business on your terms and truly live your big ticket life. You either make excuses or you choose to level up. What amazing guests living the big ticket life. Woo! Woo! Brandon Brittingham.
Appreciate you having me here today, man.
It's that kind of discernment, that kind of focus, that kind of forward thinking that's so important if you're going to succeed in business today.
Jeff and I are like friends. We're real friends.
We are like so you unlock fortune and freedom without all the stress that normally comes along with it.
It all comes down to your why. Your business, why are you doing it? How is it going to change the world and what's it going to do for your family?
I want you to celebrate your success.
Talk about the struggle, but I promise you, the story is in your struggle.
They'll never be able to say that about me because people only see me working hard in anything that I'm doing whenever they see me.
Focused on your success and the success of those around you.
But being that constant in your community, good or bad, whether things are great in the community, bad in the community, be steady.
Unapologetically do business and life on your terms and truly live your big ticket life. What amazing guests living the big ticket life. And we discuss how they do it and the big ticket methods they use. The things that make your life successful so you do life and business on your terms.
In and of itself, the only limitations that we really have on ourselves is the ones that we allow to be put on ourselves. And most people don't look at it in that perspective.
There's nothing wrong with being humble, but there's also nothing wrong with stepping into your superpower and letting people know who you are.
Get ready to do life and business on your terms and truly live your big ticket life. All right. Hey, welcome to the Big Ticket Life. I've got an amazing guest with me this week. Every podcast host says that. All their guests are amazing. But the reality is we do a lot of work to have really great people come to you. This week, we've got Quentin West, who really is in the real estate game. Somebody that I would say is definitely doing life and business on his terms. Quentin, welcome to the show, man. Happy to have you here.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate you having me and hope we can provide some value to your audience today.
Yeah. So this show, we are digging into, I guess the word arbitrage would be the word of the day, right? Which kind of seems like
Absolutely.
That might be like one of those good quality 6th or 7th grade spelling bee words.
Yeah.
Because people might look at it and say, what the hell does arbitrage even mean? So let's just kind of jump into that. Like explain the concept. And then let's get into what you're doing with it. We'll talk about your family if you're all right with that, and maybe some hobbies you're doing, and then like how you're kind of living outside the lines of the real estate game, outside the lines of life, doing life and business on your terms.
Yeah, absolutely. So arbitrage is basically, and it's not just specific to what we do in Airbnb. It's basically where you take one service and you purchase it for one price, add your margin on top of it, and then either lease it or sell it for a higher rate. So a lot of people do this in the service-based industry. If they're doing web design or things like that, they'll sub out the work to another contractor for cheaper and then sell it to the end customer for a higher rate. What we do in Airbnb, we rent the property for $1,600 to $2,000 a month is our average rental rate. And then we'll lease that property anywhere from $140 to $250 per night. And then we take that spread after all our utilities, our rent, cleaning costs, things like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things as you explain it that way, it just goes to show that there's not much new under the sun.
Absolutely
right?
not. Yeah. People have been doing this forever.
Yeah. Like the concept's been around forever. And as you said, I'm like, well, duh, of course that's what it is. But the reality is it takes smart people to kind of go after it, put it together, run it. Because you can, I would imagine pretty quickly, you can not cover that spread.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. And that's why we have kind of nailed down our technique and our numbers, so that in our market we know exactly what we're looking for. We can be confident going into a new property.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting as you're explaining it. I just saw this might be a little tip for our listeners and maybe even for you, but there's arbitrage in billboard advertising.
Yeah.
So in my retail business, I just started locally with blip billboards.
Okay.
And as best I can understand their model, they would contract with, companies that own billboards and do traditional billboard advertising. They contract with them, as best I could see it, for a monthly rate. And then they sell out their empty space. So we put in our advertising in their portal,
Yep.
and then it gets dropped in those open spots. Because most billboards anymore, new ones at least, are being built digitally. So they'll rotate out every 8 seconds or so.
Oh yeah.
They get a lot more ad space versus the old school way of making a big old 20-foot by 50-foot banner and printing it and getting some guy to put his life in his hands and climb 100 feet in the air. That's done, right? That's done.
Oh yeah.
But it's a really neat concept. So, I mean, anybody that does advertising and you would think a billboard message could run. I mean, I'll share. I think we're up to like 2,300 times showing, and we've spent like $65.
Yeah.
And it's really great. I always like to kind of scheme and we do this show audio and video. So it always pays to watch the video because you get tonality, body language, facial expression. I always like to kind of scheme. I'm making the little evil doctor from the Minions hands with Dr. Evil hands right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you want to, in a way, if you kind of want to put one across somebody's bow, if there's a reason for that competitively, Blip Billboards is fantastic for that. Just fantastic. Because you can put their address in. Yeah, it's really a neat thing. And this topic of arbitrage, it's yet another example. So you're the guest. Let me have you do some talking. How'd you get into this? Explain your journey in life.
Exactly. So I'm actually a college dropout. I thought I wanted to be an aerospace engineer. I had a class in high school where we would work on planes, and it's a really cool class, and I love doing it. And I've always kind of been interested in airplanes and aerospace. And my parents, of course, were always pushing me to be an engineer. So it just kind of lined up. So I went to Virginia Tech. I was there for a year and a half, and I just realized that I hated it. College was not for me. During class, they would say things like, if you work really hard for the next 4 or 5 years, you get out, you can get a $60,000 a year job. And that never really made sense to me. Why would I put in all this work to just make $60,000 a year?
Yep.
And I was struggling to get by in college. We were going through our coding classes and things like that, and I was having to get extra help from the teacher, from other classmates. So I finally dropped out after a year and a half. I went and worked with my parents for another year and a half, and my ultimate goal was to buy real estate. When I was 19, my dad had a friend that passed away, and he pushed me to purchase his home. So I actually got into that house for around $16,000. And I was that kid that worked over the summer, sold candy bars, did whatever I could to save up money. So I had this nest egg of about 18 grand saved up. And at the time, 16,000 of, the money, the 18,000 that I saved up over all these years was a hard pill to swallow. But
yeah,
he was
almost
pushing
90%.
me to buy. Yeah. I mean, it just didn't make sense to me at the time. I was a 19-year-old kid. But I purchased the house. I went and, did some painting myself, fixed it up as best I could, and I ended up renting for $750 a month. And I got a lot of cash flow off of that over the next few years, of course, because I paid cash for it.
Right.
And then I started working for my parents, doing construction. And I had a couple close calls. I hit a power line with a crane and almost died doing that. And just had a lot of, it was scary on the job. A lot of people not doing what they should be, almost hitting me with excavators, you name it. And at the time I was getting this cash flow from that house. So I was like, I kind of like this. I haven't even been to the house in over a year, and every month I'm getting
Right.
$750 a month. So I thought, I think I'm going to go into real estate full time. And at that time, the best thing that I knew to do to get into real estate was get my license. So I remember I was studying for my test, and my dad, he wanted me to work in the company, and of course, I felt bad for leaving him, but it was kind of a make or break it for me, because if I failed the test, then I knew I would be stuck working construction, which was not what I wanted my end goal to be. And I
Yeah.
passed the
If I
test.
can if I could
Yeah,
just
yeah,
say
go
real
ahead.
quick, I think if I were you, I would have said to your dad, Dad, if I stay around this thing, this job's going to kill me. I've been damn near electrocuted.
Yeah,
Had somebody almost bury me with an excavator. I love real estate,
yeah,
but I think I got to be on a different side of it. So anyway, we're approaching the time to take your test.
yeah, absolutely. So we get up to the test. I passed the test. I think it was by 1 point. So I barely skated over it. Um, and then started working for Remax. I quickly excelled in there because I'm just naturally a hard worker. I, have these goals that I set, and I'm pushing and doing everything I can to hit them. I was walking in the rain, knocking doors, and going on properties that had no trespassing signs, just trying to make a sale.
Right.
So it was just naturally in me to put in the work and do what these people that were more successful than me were telling me to do. So I made six figures my first year. I dumped every bit of that into buying houses. I bought my first home. I moved into it. That was the first sale I made. I purchased it with 5% down, but I got 3% back as my commission. And then I got 1.5% in closing costs from the seller. So I was in this house for like $1,100, and it was a foreclosure. So I was able to put some work into it, and it built in about 33,000 in equity. So people started talking to me about a home equity line of credit. So I took out a home equity line of credit then, and I had now 33,000 in cash. I bought two other houses. And then somebody told me about Airbnb, and, for me talking to him, it seemed super easy. So it's like, well, if this guy can do it, then I can do it. So I moved back in with my parents and started renting out my house for $2,000 a month to this company that was coming to the area. And, I was cash flowing about $500 a month with that home. And then with Airbnb, it started going up to 3,000, 3,200, 3,500. And I was cash flowing $1,000 to $1,500 a month. So at that point, I realized this is something I need to double down on. So I turned my other two properties into Airbnbs. Now I had $3,000 to $5,000 a month in cash flow just from these three properties. And at that point, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and let me ask you, what date range are we talking about here? How many years ago is this?
So this was 3 years ago. I bought my
Okay.
first house November of 2019. Well, second
right.
house, I guess you would say. I still had the other house, but it was in an area that I couldn't Airbnb. It was a worst part of town. But had those three houses. At this point, my credit was kind of maxed out, and I couldn't buy any more houses. But I wanted to get into more Airbnbs. So I was, researching how to buy properties, no money down, all this kind of stuff. And one day I found somebody talking about arbitrage on YouTube, where you rent a property and then you sublease it with Airbnb. So again, this was another situation where I listened to the information and immediately took action. And it turned out the first landlord I ever called, we met the next week, had coffee, he signed a lease with me. And I didn't even have an LLC at this point. I mean, that's why I tell people I coach some other arbitrage hosts now, and I tell them it's not as complicated as you make it. Just start
Right.
reaching out. You can fill in the gaps along the way. I think that's with everything. You don't have to know the total start to finish, process. You just need to get started.
Yeah.
In that house,
There,
go ahead.
yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. So
Yeah, it's a
let's kind
lot.
of pause there because I really want to have our listeners and viewers really kind of understand all that you're talking about. So let's kind of take a step way back and make a left turn in our conversation around education and what you realize sitting in college.
Yeah.
This is a common theme. This is something
Yeah.
that on a local, personal level, I'm really trying to affect change for kids in school right now, kids that are going to be going through high school in a few years, to bring a focus for our local education and educational district, school district, weird way to say
Yeah.
school, give focus to them, those students, on skills and careers. Because as you said, you're sitting a year and a half in college. You're like, I got to work hard. I got to go into debt. If I don't go into debt, I got to work to pay off this tuition and room and board.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make 60 grand a year. That's just not all that appealing to me.
Yeah.
So I'll ask you
Absolutely.
this. What's your view of our education system as it exists today against the opportunity to earn, create a living in today's society?
So I think it's good for some people. Not everybody is going to want to put in the work and the stress it takes to build a business.
Yep.
95% of people aren't going to do that. So I think it's good for those type of people that can't build their own opportunities. But if you want somebody to hold your hand, then college is for you. They'll walk you through exactly what you need to do to get a job, and then you have that security. If you are not happy with the standard employment system, working for somebody else, somebody telling you where you can vacation, somebody setting how much money you're going to make every year, then college is not for you. It's a waste of time. And that's how I perceived it. I only went because my parents pushed me to go. That's what all parents teach, go to college, get a good job, start your IRA or 401k, and
and that's not a knock on mom and dad.
No, it's not
that's
at
not
all.
a knock on mom and dad. It's just what they were taught. It's the system, and then I think there's a two-part parallel existence in this conversation. There's one part, the educational system as it exists in the moment, and there's the society and culture as it exists in the moment.
Yeah.
And for a long time, those two paths really ran in a nice parallel line together until the age of about 22. And then your career path took off and you could leave education. Whereas today, I look at it as those paths kind of crisscross like crazy. As you said, you were in an educational moment discovering that video on YouTube.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And
I mean,
you took that path of education and career and like mashed it up into something that most people conventionally don't think about, and took that moment to improve. And and right now, I think the world is moving away from certificates and rewarding competency.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we are definitely moving towards competency. Like when I hire somebody now for our companies, I'm not looking at if they got a college degree. I could care less. It's an interview with them to see what their experience is in the workplace, because a piece of paper doesn't tell me anything. If we have somebody that's managing property, they can earn a $60,000 to $80,000 a year position just working for our company. They need zero college experience for that. But what I'm looking at is, can you manage people? Can you manage property? Can you manage problems? Can you manage 10 or 15 different issues at one time, keep them on schedule, keep them on budget? So, college definitely doesn't teach you how to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It seems to me that, and we can spend a little bit of time on this, but we don't have to spend all the time on it. It just seems to me that, we know, and no matter what side of the political spectrum we're on, I think we could all agree that governments and education is government. People may disagree with that statement, but when you look at the connections of funding from the government to the local educational system, it is government. We know government typically lags 5 to 10 years behind, right?
Yeah.
Well, our world clips along at a faster and faster pace every year. And I think our educational systems are becoming antiquated. And, I think we're in this, rebirth of what an educational institution stands for and does in our society.
Yeah.
Where it's going to go in the future, I don't know. But what we just uncovered, what we just discussed, is that the need for that typical 4-year degree is really almost, I don't know that it's at a low point. It just isn't, maybe not the lowest point, but it certainly is on a downward trend. Would you agree with
Yeah.
that?
Definitely in value. I would definitely
Yeah.
say that, especially with all the opportunity we have now with cell phones and the education that's out there just for free. There are thousands of
Yep.
businesses you can start. And the very first year, you can start most businesses that make 50, 60,000 a year. So
Yep.
if you have any kind of entrepreneur bone in your body, something that's going to tell you that, going to school and getting a degree may not be the right decision. And as I look back at people that I graduated with, it's nothing against them or what they're doing, but I see that they're struggling to get jobs, or they're
Right.
still living with their parents, or they're, 5-6 years behind where they should be if they took action and, did something that colleges aren't teaching you how to do. They're working basic jobs, just trying to get by, pay a couple bills, and, move on. They're hoping that, I guess, they get a bigger opportunity. But,
Yeah.
when I talk to them, I tell them, the opportunity is not going to just come. The opportunity comes whenever you're working towards something. It
Yeah.
doesn't just fall in your lap. And that's with everything that I've ever accomplished. It's when I was working towards something, even if I didn't know what the end goal, sorry about that, was going to bring. I was working towards something, and eventually I fell upon something that continued to pay me for years to come.
Yeah. Yeah. No, love all that. Yeah. I think we need to, and this is why I constantly talk about this, and I bring it up because for me, I just want to, and a lot of people think I'm anti-college, and I'm really not. What I am is I'm anti, you must follow this path and you must conform to that path. Because
Yeah,
from a
I agree.
personal level, that mantra almost killed my firstborn son.
Yeah.
Ninth grade, the kid's suicidal because the pressure of education. He just isn't that kid. He is not a book kid. He is not a college kid. And
Yeah.
now, being 6 months, 6 months removed from graduating high school, he is a different human being entirely.
Yeah.
Entirely different human being. Down to, getting that kid to clean his room was an act of Congress and,
Yeah.
lobbing bombs in a pseudo World War III in our home during high school years.
Yeah.
Now, the kid's as tidy as can be.
Yeah. That's awesome.
He's out there hustling on his own, he had some, yard work hustle, landscape hustle, help you out with your home hustle, like little mild home improvement stuff. He went to Career Center for carpentry and construction. He's not in that trade presently because I think he found out he doesn't really enjoy it all that much.
Yeah.
But he's been hanging Christmas lights. He's got a whole list of people he can shovel snow with. He's on a path to make management in Chick-fil-A, which I think is a tremendous add to his resume. You look for people who can manage. What a great
Absolutely.
system to come up in. And while his friends are going off to college, some are going to excel and some aren't. These next 4 years, he's going to be stacking money, and he's going to be gaining real world hands-on experience.
Yeah.
And what I want to challenge, and why I bring great people on like you is I want to challenge people to think like folks like you exist. Like you'll hire somebody, but you got to put in the work.
Absolutely.
Right? You got to put in the work to improve yourself and be that competent person. By the way, how old are you?
24.
Gee whiz.
I
Yeah,
know,
because
I always get that.
when you said you got into this 3 years ago, I'm like, 3 years ago? You're referencing college time? I'm like, wait a minute. So 24.
24.
My goodness. Man, to be 24
Yes, sir.
where you're at, good on you, my friend. Good on you.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah. So All right, so we got the real estate foundation set, and let's actually do this before we get back into what you do well and in the real estate thing. And I'm sure you do a lot of things well. Um, People might say, you know what? What do you mean it's easy to start a business? What do you mean
Yeah.
you didn't have an LLC and you went and got that contract? Walk through what that's kind of like for people in case they've never heard that before, because I know what you're talking about, but
Yeah. Yeah. So I've got a couple businesses. I've got a cleaning company, landscaping, Airbnb, and then I do some coaching. With any business I've ever started, I was kind of proving the concept first before I put a lot of time into it. And I didn't realize that's what I was doing until I started educating myself more on, building businesses and your brand and things like that. But that's exactly what I was doing. I put in a little bit of time in the front end, tried to prove the concept. And then whenever I knew I could make money at it, that's when I doubled down and continued to pursue it. And I think the misconception is, everybody has to have every bit of knowledge before they start. And when I'm coaching people, that's the number one thing they have to get over before they see success. They want to have their LLC perfect. They want to have all their contracts in place. They want to have a website. They want to have, employees. They're trying to get employees before they even have the company, making money. And it just doesn't make sense. They're putting all this effort and cost into something that they may not even enjoy and that may not even be profitable for them as a person, because everybody has their strengths. Mine happens to be Airbnb real estate, putting deals together. And somebody else might have a strength of networking. Their strength is bringing people together, making, profits on relationships, linking people to like the arbitrage stuff, like we do arbitrage with Airbnb. I know a guy right now, his entire business is around taking software that he buys for $18 and he sells it at several thousand a month. But he made that relationship. Now he's arbitraging the software to other people in the marketplace because they don't have that relationship. That's his strength. Right. And he's the middleman that, makes sure everything's up and running and going. He couldn't survive in a business like mine. For one, he doesn't enjoy working with people, and, it's just not his expertise. So before you put all that time and money into a business, I think you need to prove the concept, prove it works for you, and make sure you enjoy it,
Yeah. Well, I mean, going back to my son as a reference, he was very inspired to get into that trade, the construction carpentry trade, by my grandfather. Because as a little boy, we'd go visit, and he'd work in his wood shop with them, and that's all great. And I challenged him to go maybe down the HVAC or electrical path, just because I've seen the kind of incomes those folks can make. Because at my store, I see what I get charged when things break.
Oh yeah,
talking to those guys, and you're more inside. You're not out in the elements. You're not baking in the sun, baking in the summer, freezing in the winter. But anyway, proving that concept is really important. So all right, so somebody finds that passion, they love it. They're like, all right, I can make some money with this. There's a market here for it. Structurally. And we're not dispensing legal advice here, but I think a lot of people, they get really hung up here, on setting up the legal entity.
Yeah.
Any tips there that you could share of like maybe a good resource where people could go?
Yeah. I mean, if you want it done for you, then you can either hire an attorney to write it out for you, or you can use LegalZoom. Now I just go to North Carolina Secretary of State and I can get it for, a third of the cost as paying somebody else to do it.
Right. Because LegalZoom and lawyers are really doing arbitrage over top of the state.
That's exactly right. Yeah. All they're doing is exactly what I'm doing now, and then tacking on their fee. So
yeah. I have such a ingrained, I don't know if I want to call it distrust, but government, I just don't, I'm a very small, limited government, like
Yeah.
liberty, freedom, get out of my life kind of guy.
Yeah.
So logging in, especially to Pennsylvania's portals, which are just
Yeah.
awful, is just something I don't do. So I'm willing and happy to pay the attorneys and the CPAs to go do it. But yeah, there, you know,
Yeah.
for anybody listening and watching, that is very smart. If you have the capacity to sit down at the computer, go to your state registrar's office for an LLC, for a tax ID number if you need it,
Yeah.
etc. That is the place to go. And it's,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, the filing fees are small, typically 50 to $100, maybe $200, depending on what number, what licensure you need.
Yeah. It's like
Um,
185 in North Carolina. And I
mhm.
mostly do it for speed of execution. You know, if I get a legal
Yeah,
Zoom or an attorney, it's going to be at least a week before I get it back. Normally, if
right.
I go to Secretary of State, I can have it back in 24 hours. And you can
See,
even
see,
pay.
right,
Yeah.
right there, difference between North Carolina and Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it definitely differs by state. And California, I think it's like a $500 fee just to set up an LLC. So
Yeah,
it's definitely different.
yeah, yeah. I mean, so to put a bow on that part of our time together, prove the concept. Make sure you really do enjoy it. Like it serves your purpose.
Yeah.
Um, like my retail business. If you would have told me 30 years ago, Jeff, you're going to do very well selling mattresses to people in that business, I'd be like, you're crazy.
Yeah.
But the skills I have to take a commodity product and make it an incredible 5-star experience and change people's lives so they can reduce pain, which I deal with tremendously from,
Yeah.
motorcycle accidents and construction work and wrestling and football from days gone by. Um, so I can speak to the power of restorative sleep. Like that's what
Yeah.
I love,
Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely.
So yeah,
And
so go ahead.
I was going to say, some people might, I say find something you enjoy. Some people might say that, nothing they've tried, they enjoy. So any business that I'm in, there are parts that I don't enjoy, but I enjoy
Mhm.
the overall process as a whole. And, tasks that I don't enjoy, I try to delegate. For the ones that I can't delegate, that's just part of doing the business. And it's a necessary evil. So, you know, everybody's not going to enjoy every part of their business. If they are, then they're probably not making much money.
Yeah, we're gonna make a right turn now in the
Yeah.
conversation. We'll get back to the houses in a minute, but
All
on
right.
this topic of finding joy, finding passion. So I was listening to another podcast, um, and the guest was saying that what they're super well, but Mark Zuckerberg on the Rogan podcast
Yeah.
is where I heard this, and super obviously very wealthy individual, super successful, right? And he was asked, what keeps you going now at this level of success? And he framed it around, I think, in projects. So he
Yeah.
laid out the handful of projects he's working on with his wife, the foundation that he has, et cetera. Maybe you agree with those projects, maybe you don't, doesn't matter. But the
Yeah.
concept of thinking in projects, I think, was very smart because as you get going, that project might be, well, I want to buy a house for my family because I want to be the first person in my family line to own a house.
Yeah.
Or I want to be set up to get my kid to college because my child does want to be a doctor, which
Yeah.
100% you need college education for that. Um, Thinking in those projects, I think, was really eye opening for me, and it kind of really reinvigorated me this summer when I heard that. It was really impactful for me to hear it said in that way.
Yeah.
So I'll ask you, what are those projects you're working on, and how are you using the work you're doing to fuel them?
Yeah. So I think very similarly to that. I've used, chapters or stepping stones, instead of projects. But anything that I do, I don't plan to do it forever unless it's something I really love and enjoy. Like when I, started uh, working construction, I knew that wasn't my end job. it was a stepping stone to the next thing. When I got my real estate license, my end goal was to own real estate, but that was the doorway to get in, to learn about it, to, I knew if I got my license and I was doing it every single day, I would grow knowledge and it would help me to get to the next step. And then the Airbnb stuff. I don't want 1,000 units of Airbnbs. That's way too much headache for me. It's just, I don't love it that much to where I want to build it to that scale, but it's a stepping stone to the next thing. So now I'm working on coaching, which I really enjoy coaching, and I can do it at an immense scale. I can teach hundreds of people at one time how to get into Airbnb. I see the way it changes their lives, but I know that this is only a stepping stone to get to higher end stuff like speaking engagements, events. So if I get used to speaking to, 1,000 people in a webinar or a couple hundred people in my class, I know that I can do that in a larger setting in front of, several hundred people in person at an event. So I do see things in projects or chapters, however you want to phrase it. I just continue to push until I find something that, I see I'm going to enjoy forever. My end goal is to have 10,000 units of multifamily real estate. I just know that all these things that I'm doing now are building up to that. I started working on my brand recently, posting more on social media, building my Instagram, Facebook presence, my Facebook group. All these things are building up to that, because you can't get 10,000 units like Grant Cardone without more people knowing of you.
Right. Well, I mean, what you're laying out there is very smart, and I hope people listen to it, because we live in a world right now where there's so much flash.
Yeah.
There's so much, razzle dazzle. It's all this, look at me through your phone on social media, but nobody sees the work. Nobody, what you laid out there, very smart. It's a little learning lesson in and of itself. And it is also, so it's such a dichotomy of maybe how your parents were raised, or maybe even your grandparents were raised, being that you're only 24. Your grandparents are still around, I would imagine.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, through their lens, to say at 24, I don't look at things long term, is probably such a mind warp for them, because their basis of being brought up was, you're going to find a career, you're going to work it for 20, 30 years, you're going to get the big retirement party, the pension, the gold watch.
Yeah.
And life's going to be grand, right? It's just, but the younger generations are right in your frame of mind. Well, idealistically, that's where they're at. From a work ethic, some are and some aren't. But you're doing it. That path is so smart. I love hearing it. And I love that you have the goals. So many people don't have those goals written down. I want 10,000 units of multifamily real estate. That's really, really smart, as opposed to saying, well, I just want to make, 10 figures a year, which is probably what you would be making if, when you hit that number. But you have it very clearly laid out. Really smart. Really, really like it. So you're doing the Airbnb arbitrage, which I really love that we kind of had that granular topic, but it spread out to a few different things. So
it builds a base.
I'm sorry?
I said it builds a base for sure to figure out how I got here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I also like the fact that, you said you want to accomplish these stepping stones. So as you work up, as you see yourself as a speaker, as a coach at scale, that's very different from where I think a lot of folks, I shouldn't say a lot, some folks jump in and say, well, I'm a coach, but they have no basis.
Yeah.
They have no foundation.
Yeah. I never knew I wanted to be a coach. I started doing really well in Airbnb, and I had all these people in my community start reaching out to me. Can I get lunch with you? Can I do this? Can I buy you coffee? And after about 20 lunches and coffees that I did for free, and then they didn't even take action on it, I realized, I've got a skill that I could sell, and people will pay a lot of money for it. And not only will they pay for it, but they'll get a lot of value from it. Like I taught my parents how to do Airbnb arbitrage, and my dad got 2 units after about 30 or 60 days of just like calling me. Like, I didn't do any serious coaching with him, but I helped him get over any problems that he needed to get over. I gave him my scripts so that he could, cold call landlords, things like that. But he ended up getting 2 properties, and within 30 days, he had a $40,000 wire, from a movie production company that rented his 2 properties. It paid for every cent that he put into those 2 properties. So he had no money in it now. Now he's cash flowing $3,000 to $5,000 a month on those 2 houses. So it's just ridiculous the difference that Airbnb can make in somebody's life. With one decision and a little bit of investment, he's now added an entire new, full-time income source. Basically, I mean, if you look at the average person's
100%.
income, they're not making $3,000 to $5,000 a month, especially not passively.
Right.
No.
Yeah. Very, very, very smart. Very smart, man. I've loved our time together today. I think we covered quite a few different topics. How do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I've got Instagram. It's Q Deals Homes, and then they can see me on just my website, realquentinwest.com. Then I've got Facebook, Quentin West.
Yeah, very good, very good, man. I've really appreciated our time together. Thank you for joining me. Really love it. Oh, you know what? As we part, I didn't even get to talk about your family.
Yeah. So I'm married. My wife, Bethany, I've got 2 kids. One is 9. The other is 10 months.
Wow.
It's a big
So you're
spread.
very busy. Yeah. So what do you hope to give them?
The biggest thing is legacy and peace of mind. So I want them to work. I don't like to spoil my kids. I want them to learn how to work like I was taught how, because growing up, we were blessed. We had good money, but my dad didn't just give us stuff. He gave us goals to set for ourselves, so that we would reach that goal and then have, whatever we were wanting, whether it was money or a new skateboard or whatever it was at the time that we wanted. So I want to pass that on to them, make sure they know how to work. And then the legacy side of it, like the Rockefellers did with, their self-directed insurance policies where they built their legacy and their long-term wealth. I want to be able to set something up like that for my family so that my grandkids, great grandkids still have something that is passed on from me. And it changes that family tree.
Yep. Very smart. Love the clear vision. That's, I think that's one of the biggest things I see from all the people I talk to. The super successful people have that real clear, defined vision. I mean, you're talking about 3-4 generations ahead of Quentin West descendants. Really smart, man. And I love it. Love it. So, man, this has been great. Really appreciated your time on the show. Yeah, thanks for stopping by. And everybody else, we'll see you next week on The Big Ticket Life. Take care. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode of The Big Ticket Life. You've heard from another amazing guest living their own big ticket life, and now it's time to live yours. First, I'd love for you to take me up on my free gift to you. Claim your gift at gift.thebigticketlife.live. That's gift.thebigticketlife.live. See, all your life you've been told what is and what isn't possible by the loudest voices from the cheapest seats. It's time to finally do life and business on your terms. Sure, you've heard similar things, but without clarity on what can be done, it's easy to have your customers, employees, maybe even partners, and your spouse keep you from truly living a big ticket life. My big ticket methods shift you into that investor seat in your business, away from commodity and away from competition, into a market of one, so you can finally live your own big ticket life. So my gift to you is for you to book your discovery call today, where we'll uncover first
the Chivo behaviors, those chief everything officer behaviors that hold you back, and why moving into the investor seat in your own business is critical. 2, we'll uncover the premium position that's up for grabs right now in your market that you're missing out on. And 3, which big ticket methodologies are just waiting to be dropped into your business to explode your sales and profits. So again, thanks for listening to this episode. I'd love for you to take action right now. Accept this gift. Book your call. Go to gift.thebigticketlife.live. Again, that's gift.thebigticketlife.live.